Welcome into the Central Postgame show right here on STL Sports Central. I'm Chris Pelikan. He is Brenden Schaeffer. And, for those of you who are joining us here live on YouTube at the moment, you are the best fans that we have here on STL Sports Central because it is late on a Wednesday night, Thursday morning. The Cardinals lose 4-2 in 13 innings in Seattle. The first time they have ever been swept in Seattle. So we have a first to discuss here, Brenden, but sort of the tale of this series. What you see from this Cardinal team, the pitching was pretty strong throughout. The bats not so much, and that extra innings tonight, innings 10, 11, 12 for the Cardinals offense, just sort of a case study in feebleness. I don't know if that's the best adjective I can come up with, but you just basically see this team unable to do anything to move runners over, to put the ball in the outfield. I mean, it was just a lot of weak ground outs and pop outs and whatnot. And, so Seattle is a very, very good pitching team. There's no two ways about it. And the Cardinals, not so good of an offensive team. And that math equation right there led to an 0-3 trip to Seattle.
Yeah, that was the trip. And I always say, sweeps aren't that hard. Just play the team that got swept. The Mariners did have to work for this sweep a little bit, but as you mentioned, it almost did seem like the Cardinal bats are kind of just going through the motions at times. And with how hard those relievers were working in extra innings to try to keep this thing alive, that was even more disappointing. It's like there would be a ridiculous high wire act like you've never seen, and then the Cardinals would bat, and it would be like 1, 2, 3, and then this unbelievable performance by another really 1, 2, 3. And it's like, oh man, Saggese did have the RBI hit, but when you get one RBI single, when they're giving you free base runners, how many times did they do that? 4 times in extra innings. And then the only other run comes from the solo homer by Herrera. That's just not a great day offensively, but that's the kind of game it was. And really largely the kind of series it was for the Cardinals offensively.
Yeah. And again, when you sit there and you talk about what Seattle has from a pitching standpoint, they are one of the best pitching teams in baseball. But having said that, again, I mean, this has been, it's been the story of the year for the Cardinals. When they've pitched somewhat well, they haven't hit. When they haven't pitched well, they've hit okay. In the end, we'll look at statistics, and what we'll see is a team that was, just relatively mediocre throughout the course of the year in all aspects. But again, if we're talking about runway and we're talking about what are we learning about 26 from this group, we've had a lot of conversations about, what do we feel, who deserves a shot, that sort of thing. And, I keep coming back to sort of my originals on this whole deal. And, we've got Mason Wynn, who I feel like has his leash. He'll be around for a long time. Brendan Donovan's a guy who's coming up on a contract in a year, but I still think they've missed his bat exponentially while it's out of this lineup. Just a solid bat to ball guy. And then Ivan Herrera, those guys seem to be what I think to be kind of the future core of this team offensively, or a piece of it. I would hope they would acquire different players, but again, I mean, you see Alec Burleson not come up big tonight. He's been good most of this year. You see Nolan Gorman struggle to put the bat on the ball in a meaningful way in this game. And again, I don't know, Brenden. I mean, every time we talk now, we've got 15 games left in the season. It feels like we have to discuss 26, and you can't glean anything from one game, but I mean, where are you with this offense? As they turn an eye to 26, I know 4.5 still out of the wild card, or 4, I believe it is. So, that the dream still lives on. But I guess the question I have for you is what do you think you're learning as we sit here on Thursday morning with 15 games left in the season about this offense?
Yeah, and Ace Rob says, thank God there's only 15 games left, because it does feel like we're kind of slogging to the finish in some ways. Yeah, the offense for me is simultaneously not the biggest problem when I think about 2026. And it also can't just remain static. Like, there has to be some moving and shaking that happens for this lineup, we would think. And like you said, one game doesn't make that true. Tonight was brutal to watch offensively. But as others have pointed out in the comments, like, it's not just a recent thing. It's not a new development. Right. The Cardinals have had these struggles offensively And again, it feels like games or at least innings at a time, they'll kind of just roll through with you. I don't know about feebleness, but I can't think of a better way to describe it. It's just not especially competitive at times. And when you get into the 13th inning, it's like, you almost sort of expect that to be what it looks like after seeing it for the first 12 innings. And I don't know individually when you look at the names, like we feel like a JJ Weatherholt's going to be here next year. And so can he make an impact? You do have, you mentioned guys on the injured list right now, like a Donovan that you think you're going to get back. But I mean, Nootbaar goes 1 for 6 tonight. Burleson had, opportunities, goes 0 for 6. Gorman with the 0 for 5. I thought Gorman maybe in that last at bat was going to step up and do what the Mariners did. It seemed like a home run was going to be the way to end this game, and the Cardinals couldn't find the guy to hit it. I still feel like the starting pitching for 2026 is the thing that I'm looking at needs to be more readily addressed. But yeah, the offense is kind of, despite a new hitting coach this year, feels like the offense that we've seen for the last several years for the Cardinals, honestly. I don't know that it's been all too different than some of those other years where people were, clamoring to get rid of the hitting coach or make some changes. That I don't know that it's a philosophy. Chris, I don't know what to put my finger on and say, well, this is clearly what it's got to be. But the results are, kind of speaking for themselves, and we don't like what those results are saying.
It does kind of, and I couldn't agree more. And I think, the conclusion that we're going to come to eventually is what many of us suspected, which is that the Cardinals have not internally had a good offensive team, right? Like, point being, they didn't need more development. They just have a bunch of guys who are 6 and 7 hole hitters. That's what they have, and so again, now we start trying to sift through it. And, is Ivan Herrera a guy? He's new enough to the game. He's done enough in what I would tell you to be, limited opportunities that I believe if you can find a position for the guy on the field, he's a guy that should be back. Brendan Donovan, we've talked about this before, but there has to be a decision made on him from a contractual standpoint as he comes into his final year of arbitration. So you got to decide whether you want to give this guy a 5-year contract at some point in time, or whether, because if the answer is no to that, then you got to move him this offseason and see what you can get. But you talked about Nootbaar. We've talked about Gorman. We've talked about Jordan Walker. Victor Scott's an interesting one because he's got, obviously a unique tool, set of skills with his speed and his defense. But at this point in time, Victor Scott feels like a luxury to a team that has 6 or 7 really, really solid offensive pieces in it, and that you can stick in the 9 hole and let him hit 220 with a sub 4 slug and, kind of that sort of thing, and feel okay about it because he's so good defensively. He can create havoc on the bases. But man, when you struggle to have any sort of offensive centerpiece, like they have right now, I just don't know that Victor Scott belongs. You need to find an offensive upgrade in center field as well. So again, I'm looking at this and saying, I don't see them getting rid of Arenado because no one wants him. Contreras does not want to leave, so he's around. Mason Wynn is, again, he does enough all around that I feel like he's the guy you build around to some extent. And then I think Donovan and Herrera are the only 2 guys I see left that shouldn't be floated out there and trade this offseason. So, we run back to this question. Everything seems to roll back to this, Brendan, but, we don't know what Chaim Bloom's going to do. But it feels like the proof is in the pudding that there has to be a lot of stuff done. And honestly, I think if you got to take some chances, you don't know what value you have in trading some of these guys. But you have to mix this up because what we have right now, it's not working. And I don't know a world where it does work.
Yeah. And it's an interesting conundrum for sure. And Samuel chiming in and says, look, Victor Scott, 80 OPS plus is fine with the defense he brings. And I actually think that is where I come down on it. Like, I'm not looking at this lineup going, well, you know what? Their 9th hitter's got to be better. And I understand it. Like, I don't really think there's a right or wrong way to look at this. Clearly, we're all seeing the results and saying that this isn't going to suddenly overnight become a competitive lineup. We just don't feel like, it was mentioned that a lot of the same players have been getting the opportunities for 2-3 years now. And, you can change the hitting coach. You can change different things. Personnel will have to turn over at a certain point. But when I think about the way that you're building not just the lineup to be productive, but a strong ball club, especially knowing that not overnight are the Cardinals going to turn into this, this swing and miss pitching staff. Eventually, they'd like to get to that, I think, Chris, but I don't think it's going to happen in a year or two. Like, you got to get the different personnel. You're not going to turn Miles Michaelis into a swing and miss starter. It's just not going to happen. And so with that in mind, I do think valuing being strong up the middle defensively carries some weight, but can you afford to say, well, if Mason Wynn's still going to OPS 680, that's good enough because he's doing everything else. Victor Scott can OPS 620 because he's so good defensively. Pedro Pajes can do the same because he's so good defensively and managing the pitchers, which the Cardinals believe that he is. Like, you maybe can't have all three, but I'm sort of in support of saying you can have 2.5 or maybe 3, but then you have to be right about the other spots. And collectively, when, Lars Nootbaar has a bit of a down season compared to what he has been, when Jordan Walker flat out doesn't emerge compared to his previous stats and actually performs even lesser than he did in 2024, Arenado very much doesn't bounce back. He takes another dive in his offensive productivity. All of that is not going to work at the same time. I would be inclined to at least keep the guys that, like Mason Wynn and Victor Scott, I think have upside to be more offensively than they've been so far, and assign the blame to the other positions. But like I said, I think it's like a Rorschach test where everybody's going to look at the blob of ink and go, man, this is a blob of ink. And I you try to figure out exactly what it means and the way to go about fixing it. I like Victor Scott. I do think it'd be nice if he's OPSing more than 620, but I also think he's a young player that has the chance to do that in the future. I look at Mason Wynn very similarly. The Arenado thing is like, yeah, nobody wants him, but at a certain point, you just pay him and you don't have to play him. If he's, if he's going to perform to a 660 OPS, like, do you want to, how many years in a row is ownership and then the new front office going to be okay with hamstringing their organization because of the contracts of the predecessors? Like, I'll just be curious to see, that part of it. If they look at it and say, we just have to make some sweeping changes. It's not very Cardinals-esque, but we're going to do A, B, C, and D. And, that's going to mean maybe not some great things for 3 or 4 of you, but that's just the way that we're going to approach it. And maybe Chaim Bloom already has that in mind, Chris, of what he wants to do. I don't know. But for me, I would look at, and like, there are some things you just can't help. If Contreras is not hurting you offensively, and actually played really well defensively tonight too, but he's probably not your first baseman the next time the Cardinals are really contending and winning. And because he's still playing at a level much higher than Arenado offensively, maybe you would have trade value if you would waive it. But I wouldn't advocate for that. Like, if I'm advocating for that, I better say forget the 2 years of Brendan Donovan, trade him too, because if you think you can't win with Contreras, well, then you're probably not winning with Donovan either unless you extend him. And then now the team looks completely different than what we thought it would be. I think changes need to happen. I think it's like, we could sit here and say which ones. Hopefully Chaim Bloom has a plan for which ones, and Bill DeWitt hired him for a reason, because he's, smarter than us and can make the right decisions when there isn't a clear answer as to exactly who to trade and who to keep. It's going to need decisive action, I think, this offseason to trade 2 or 3 guys from the group, allowing the other ones to flourish. And you just have to make those right decisions, I think.
I got a plan. I don't know if Chaim does. Adley Rutschman and Brandon Lau. That's your offseason.
I mean, you could do it. You really could, Chris. And I don't know if that's like the direction they're thinking. I don't think it is.
I would agree with you. I don't think it is either.
But and even just one of those guys, you go, well, what are they doing with that? Like that now, is Lau a free agent to be, or is that a trade as well?
One more year. One more year on a deal.
1 more year.
Like 11.5 mil. So again, I'd be stunned if Tampa doesn't move him this offseason, And again, the return would have to be reasonable with a guy with 1 year left on his contract.
I think Cardinals fans have been sort of lulled into this. We're all ready to accept 2026 also being kind of meh.
God, I
right?
I hate that. You're right. I hate it.
Nobody's excited about it, but I think because they expect that that's what it's going to be, there is sort of this sense, and you guys in the comments can let me know if we're wrong about this, from fans are like, yeah, we're kicking the can down the road. There will be some movement, but it won't be like definitive and all at once. It's going to be kind of a little bit more of kicking this can down the road and dragging it out. If you went and said, we're trading for a guy on an expiring contract, deal with it because we think he can help us win baseball games, that would be such a refreshing attitude. Like, you have players with some trade value. You thought they were part of your core. Maybe some of them still are. Maybe others aren't. And maybe there's core players out there to be found, and it doesn't have to look the way that we think 26 will be this and 27 will be this, and then the Cardinals will spend. You're allowed to do things any which way you want. I would look at a team like the Royals that loses 100 games, and then last year found themselves a little bit above where they thought they'd be more quickly than they thought they'd be there, and they bought at the deadline and made the playoffs and won a series. This year, the Royals, didn't have an offense. They still don't. But at the deadline, they said, we're kind of close, and we can make some little moves. It's honestly exactly what John Mozeliak often talked about, and then I sort of stopped doing incremental upgrades. Like, I don't think the Cardinals had to, even though it was going to be runway year, just say, well, we're never making another incremental upgrade. Like, Garrett Hampson was not an incremental upgrade. Garrett Hampson was scraping the bottom of the barrel. You know what I mean? They could have been making incremental upgrades. The Royals probably won't make the playoffs this year, Chris, but they're still kind of in it, and they're trying. And I think there's some value to that. I just wonder if the Chaim Bloom front office can sort of take on, people don't want things to be like Mo did them. But I would argue that the notion of, if you actually make them and they're targeted and they're sensible, of making an incremental upgrade or two, and it not fitting like the blueprint for what we expect. The Cardinals' moves for so many years have been so predictable. Cardinals fans knew they were signing Sonny Gray before John Mozeliak knew they were signing Sonny Gray. How do I know that? Because Sonny Gray told us that he was surprised with how late in the process to get a phone call, and Mozeliak said, am I too late? Is how he addressed that conversation. Yeah. Like, if that's the way that this has gone, I think that's part of why Cardinals fans want something fresh. Right. And to your point, I don't know if Rutschman's the answer. I don't know if Brandon Lau's the answer, but trades like that, just to say, like, we're allowed to do some shit, I think would actually be something the Cardinals should be considerate of, and fans, I think, would get behind.
And this, I'm glad you brought up the Royals, because when you have Bobby Witt Jr., you've got a centerpiece, okay? And all you're doing is trying to complement your centerpiece. The Cardinals have no centerpiece.
They don't.
So when you're making a trade for an Adley Rutschman or a Brandon Lau, it's because you're thinking possibly these guys could be my centerpiece. Both of them have some element of a wart, right? Rutschman's performance offensively the last couple of years has not been what you saw early on in his career, and his trajectory's changed a little bit. Maybe a change of scenery. The fact that they gave Samuel Basayo that long-term contract makes that thing work. Brandon Lau's an interesting case just because he's a little bit on the older side from what you really want from a centerpiece. But again, he's a 30-plus home run guy. I know that the Steinbrenner Field's a little bit of a bandbox down there, but he's a real, if he's hitting in this Cardinal lineup right now, he's hitting third at this point in time, right? Which is what you want. So, when I'm talking about making any move, if I'm Chaim Bloom, it is geared towards, how do I find cornerstones? Okay. Now, because you're not going to go ahead and you're not going to sign Juan Soto for $700 million. You're not going to go, Kyle Tucker would be the real, is going to be the name this offseason. Kyle Tucker's not coming to St. Louis as much as I would like. Right. To. He's the kind of guy, but he's a $500 million guy at this point in time. So we know that they're not going to find their centerpieces that way. So and they're also not going to find centerpieces in guys who are, 24 years old and a year or two into a great career and people who are producing at a high level early on. You're not going to go get Nick Kurtz from Oakland, right? Like, that's not happening. So you have to find the guys in between, not the guys on the free agent market, the ones who are a year or two away, and not the ones who are 5 years away. So your sweet spot is Brandon Lau and Adley Rutschman at this point in time. And I think you can make deals. There was a question from Brian Quinn in the chat about what would it take to get those two guys? And I wanted to get to that. It's a really good question. And I'll be honest, I don't think I have a good answer, because the question really becomes, what is the trade value at this point in time for a Jordan Walker, for a Lars Nootbaar, for a Nolan Gorman? And you could tell me, you could tell me Jordan Walker still has immense trade value as a guy who's still pre-arb, with all the tools. But then you could also say that there's no interest in him because he's got darn near 1,000 at bats at this point in time in his major league career and has not proven to be, any sort of consistent offensive force. So I think we'd just be speculating. It's almost one of these deals where You don't know what something is worth until you put it out on the market and see what people come back at you with. But I mean,
whether they put him on the market or not, they will get phone calls about Jordan Walker this offseason. I can promise you. Now, the second sentence of the phone call where they tell you what they're willing to give you for him is the part where the Cardinals probably have to go, oh, what are we doing here? Like I think 29 other teams should be trying to lowball the Cardinals for Jordan Walker this offseason just to see if it might work. I don't think that they're getting him, as the centerpiece of a trade that helps them. But I guess to your point, I'm just speculating that in the other direction. We really don't know that. If you attach some prospects or something to Jordan Walker, is there a realm in which he's a piece in a multiplayer package that gets you a player that you're looking for? Especially like if you're talking about Brandon Lau without a lot of team control, now if you're the Cardinals, are you trading 5 years of the potential for Jordan Walker to figure it out for 1 year of a guy that you then would have to pay? Like we could go round and round with all these types of conversations. You could look at the other side and say Jordan Walker has been, nothing to your offense, and you can't really bestow upon him the right field job for next year. So it's interesting. And Brian, your question is the right one. The answer for John Mozeliak was always, I don't know, or it can't be done, because the trades didn't happen. If he could do it or felt it was the right thing to do, maybe some of those deals happen, and they never did. So I have to assume that either those guys didn't have value or he wasn't the guy to be able to extract the value. Now we're going to find out the answer, I guess, because some of these guys are going to be traded this offseason, and what the Cardinals get for them is maybe how you can measure some of that. But I'm curious about some of this other stuff here too, Chris. John says you're never winning anything with Donovan as your best player. I view that similarly to how I view like Victor Scott can't be your ninth hitter because your 4, 5, and 6 hitters stink. Like, I
100%.
think if you had 9 Brendan Donovans, you can throw any all-star team out there that you want. I will contend with that. But you don't. You have one, and you don't have anyone better than him. So like John's point isn't wrong, but it's also not a Brendan Donovan problem. That's not a reflection of Brendan Donovan, what John Hansen is saying here. It's a reflection of the rest of the roster. If Brendan Donovan is on your team, that's good. You don't get rid of Brendan Donovan because you don't have anyone better than him and
Agreed.
can't win as a result. You keep Brendan Donovan and extend him if you believe he can continue to be the player he's been for the next 5 years. That's another question. I think he can be. We'll see how he holds up over time. Durability may start to become a concern. He's been injured, at times and is currently on the IL trying to get back. But what is interesting to me is like we people kind of fixate. They're pissed at Gorman when he's striking out a bunch. They're pissed at Walker when he's just, not living up to expectations. It's Victor Scott. What have you done for me lately at the plate? I love your defense, but you're not hitting. Pages, hey, the starter gave up 6 runs, so I don't want to hear about your good defense because you can't hit either. Like this is like the way Cardinals fans think about it. And it's not any one guy's issue. It's the fact that all of them kind of have a point, and the total roster isn't enough. The total lineup isn't enough. But I don't like that that's reflected in the comment on, well, Brendan Donovan's your best player, you can't win. Brendan Donovan's going to win a World Series someday on a team where he's the 3rd or 4th best player.
Yep.
But Brendan Donovan's being himself, and that's good enough. The Cardinals need some other guys that are on Brendan Donovan's level or better. That's where I would say is the issue.
And Brendan, I think one of the reasons that I feel good about Brendan Donovan being a long-term piece with this team is the defensive versatility, whereas the other guys don't have the same thing. So not only if Alec Burleson hit and was a Brendan Donovan-esque defender across all over the field, different ball game, right?
Like a Brent Zobrist. Yeah.
Right. And Burleson made a nice play in left field tonight. I mean, he's an okay first baseman. I just think that for what Burleson does defensively, he needs to hit better if he's going to be somebody who is in your lineup every single day. So again,
or you have somebody who does, or you have I can win with a Donovan, a Burleson, a Victor Scott, a Mason Wynn. But who's going to be the guy that ties all that together? Because if you slot in your number 3 and that slots everybody else down a rung, suddenly my lineup makes a whole hell of a lot more sense. But when you're still missing that key component, and it's not that simple, I'm not saying it's easy. Alberts don't drop out of the sky, but the teams that have won, they win more games. And the Cardinals have still just been looking for that centerpiece.
and they need to continue to do so as well. He is Brenden Schaeffer. I'm Chris Pelikan. This is the Card Central Postgame Show right here on STL Sports Central. And folks, Card Central Postgame is brought to you in part by the Legal Buddy app. Life, it does happen fast. 1 minute you're driving home, the next flashing lights are in the rear view. When trouble knocks, answer with confidence. With the Legal Buddy app, you can connect to local attorneys in seconds, whether it's a DWI, car accident, criminal charge, or traffic ticket. Download the Legal Buddy app today at legalbuddyapp.com. Register and use the code LEGAL, LEGAL, to enter for a chance to win a $250 Amazon gift card. Always on your side. That is the Legal Buddy app. And as always, folks, we want you jumping in with the comments. We've been doing it fast and furious tonight, even though we are sniffing 1 a.m. So again, we got our diehards in here tonight. But yes, we love having you in the YouTube chat. And while you're in there, please hit the like and subscribe button for our family here at STL at Cards at STL Sports Central. Sorry, Brendan, it is late and I'm getting really
doing
tired.
Good. I don't think anybody can blame us for a couple of flubs here and there. I want to bring this up from King's Echo because he's been harping on Ollie Marmol pretty hard in the chat, and I'm not going to read every single question, but this is the general philosophy that he has. Herrera had a bad base running blunder there. I believe that was the 10th inning. Forgive me if I'm conflating innings together. Messes up on the bases. Marmol says nothing, just stands there. And like, you're making fun of his face. You're talking about how a guy looks. My thought is, and Chris, I'm curious for yours, but I've, been able to hear behind a closed door what Ollie Marmol thinks about certain situations at times. And I can tell you, there aren't many people in the game that it burns them up when the fundamentals don't happen the right way. Now, I don't know what King's Echo was hoping to see. Was he hoping to see him grab Herrera by the ear and tell him, this isn't a little league game, my friend. This isn't a high school baseball team. This isn't the JV team. This is Major League Baseball. These guys make, pretty good money to do this. They're going to make fundamental mistakes, and the best teams will make fewer of them. And the best teams will have the managers that can find a way to, eradicate as many of those from their game as possible. But like your reaction being that, well, Marmol just stood there. He didn't yell at Herrera. Feels very misguided to me. And I can at least tell you from my experience that, Marmol is probably just making that stone face just to avoid not making a face or saying something that he would regret. But I'm curious, Chris, your thought on mistakes happening in a game and a manager reacting, or how a manager might react, I guess, is the way to pose the question.
If we're talking about this one in particular, I would assume that it's already been discussed, and again,
probably a lot.
Yeah. And if it's to the larger portion, the larger question about Ollie, it's tough because me personally, just philosophically, I really don't believe managers make a huge difference in Major League Baseball. That hasn't always been a very popular opinion, and I'll have people tell me that it's a 10-game swing in statistics.
It's a fun conversation.
You'll see
it
that.
Really is.
So if we're just talking about Ollie long-term, I think Ollie's done a fine job. I just think he's got a really incomplete set of tools to work with this team.
Yeah.
And so again, is it fair to judge Ollie one way or the other? I don't know. I laugh all the time because we sit there and we talk about, people think Mike Matheny was one of the worst managers that this team's ever seen. He won 100 games one year, so it's kind of like, do you win in spite of a manager? Does a manager make you better?
They did.
Yeah. And,
they did with him.
But so what does it mean? And I think if we're just rounding it all full circle about why does this matter? Yeah, if Chaim Bloom, whatever he decides to do with Ollie this offseason, I'm fine with. Because, again, it's one of these deals where, Chaim Bloom has got to put his stamp on this team in some way, shape, or form. If he decides that Ollie Marmol's the right guy to lead the team, that's fine. Again, he needs to improve the players. But if he decides to go out and spend a bunch of money, Craig Counsell-esque, on somebody who he thinks, maybe he'll bring Alex Cora with him to, St. Louis after, making him, his guy in Boston for all those years.
Yeah.
That's not enough. It just isn't enough. And so, I think Ollie has done pretty well with a very, like I said, incomplete set of tools. And again, if Ollie's going crazy tonight when Herrera makes two very, very bad base running errors, then all we're talking about is his relationship with Herrera frayed, like the same way.
And then people bitch and say, people will turn around and they'll say, oh my gosh, How could he do that to the player and throw him under the bus? I mean, I've seen both sides of it from the same fan base.
Well, I mean, when Tyler O'Neill wasn't hustling,
Yep.
And Ollie called him out, that was the end of that. That was the end of that relationship right then and there. So, I mean, these guys are sensitive. There's no two ways about it. I think that they think there's a way to handle this sort of stuff. Like I said, I would be stunned if that has not already been addressed. Herrera's base running tonight, but again, to the larger question, I don't know that it's as pivotal of a moment this offseason when Chaim Bloom decides what to do with Ollie Marmol as it is what does he do to address this lineup and this rotation. So that's just my 2 cents on that. So Brendan, I wanted to run it by you a little bit on the bullpen tonight. So, again, if we're talking about 26 and trying to decide, what are we seeing? I don't know, the bullpen has been excellent. I don't know if you saw the statistic during the game, but the Cardinals have the 3rd best bullpen in all of baseball since the All-Star break. And that's super interesting from the standpoint that they traded maybe 3 of the best guys they had at the trade deadline, and yet they're still cranking out this kind of production. I don't know. Where do you sit with this bullpen? I mean, because, if you tell me that you're going to get the same production out of this group next year, sign me up, but again, do you believe that Matt Swanson is as good as he's looked lately? Do you believe Jojo Romero is a legit closer in the bigs at this point in time? Do you believe Riley O'Brien has the ability to close? I mean, it's one of these things that how much do we really believe? Is this a lying eyes situation? Because these guys have done it, but the question is this going to be something they can do consistently?
I would say that when you traded away the number of relievers, veteran relievers that you did at the trade deadline at the end of July, this has gone about as well as it could have possibly gone since then. To discover like a new gear for Matt Swanson, a new gear for Riley O'Brien, and seeing those guys, kind of settle into their role. And I know Jeremy and people hate Ryan Fernandez at this point, but he was in there for the 2nd inning and he mowed through the middle of one of the most heated lineups in baseball right now in the inning before that. I mean, who were the batters that were in that inning? It was off the top of my head, I don't know, but it was like the 3, 4, 5 of the Mariner lineup. And he struck out the second batter on a slider that fell off the table that looked like 2024 Ryan Fernandez. So I'm not giving up on Ryan Fernandez yet, actually. I don't think that you love what he's giving. He's got an 80 ERA. I get it. But throw him out there in February and kind of see if he could do more of that because, there have been some better signs from him. But primarily, I think Swanson, O'Brien are 2 guys that have shown they're going to be in your bullpen next year and probably not guys that are riding the Memphis shuttle. Like, I don't know what their options are, and I don't really care. Those are guys that I think should probably be on the team next year. I don't know if they're your 9th inning guys, but if Romero doesn't get moved, and I think it makes sense to bring him into next year at this point. You probably get more for him in July if you're trading him than you'd get for him in November. That's just the nature of relief pitching. Sure. So, like, that's 3. Kyle Leahy's been great. I kind of still think you put him into a stretch out rotation spot. But, I think the experiment of some of these guys, you're not going to hit on all of them, Chris, but I've been pretty impressed, actually, with what we've seen from some of these guys.
To answer your question, Fernandez got Arozarena to line out to first in the 12th. Cal Raleigh was intentionally walked, struck out Julio Rodriguez, and then got Josh Naylor to fly out to center. So
that strikeout of Rodriguez, yes. I mean, that was a hell of a pitch.
Yep, like you said, this was that was the old version of Ryan Fernandez and the one that the fans have not seen significantly in recent years. So so I guess rolling back to your point about Kyle Leahy, I'm very interested in your thoughts on that because again, if we're talking about fixing this lineup, and I'm the Brandon Lau Adley Rutschman train, they need to fix the rotation as well, right? And we haven't even said the word Michael McGreevy tonight. McGreevy pitched a great game. I think you and I did a show a few weeks back where I was sitting there saying, I really feel good about McGreevy, Liberatore, and Palante in the back 3 of your rotation next year. Well, like fast forward a month or whatever we've been since we talked about that. And Andre Palante looks like a gas can at this point in time. And I don't know that he's done enough to deserve a spot. Liberatore has certainly seems to be looking like he's fatigued to a point where he just can't maintain his stuff throughout games at this point, which again, I know he has thrown more innings in a season than he has this year, but not recently. And I think that's I just think Liberatore probably, we're getting to the point where maybe they should shut him down, but you've seen enough from him to feel good about him in the back end of the rotation. But what are your thoughts on, the Kyle Leahy thing's interesting. Do you think Sonny Gray's back? I mean, where are you at with the rotation for 26?
Yeah, so the rotation to me is more of a, I don't know if I'd say problem. There's just more unknowns to me than the lineup, because they could decide to trade maybe one guy from the lineup and run everybody else back out there, and we're not going to be expecting majorly different results, but you could kind of get away with it. You can't really do that on the rotation side, and yet it kind of feels like what might happen. The Sonny part is really interesting. Rumors kind of surfacing that, well, maybe the Giants would have interest. I think Sonny would be more, and this is not based on any real knowledge, it's just kind of like tea leaf reading. I think Sonny would be more open to being traded this offseason than he was this past offseason, where he was around for 1 year and then said, I don't really want to just uproot my whole deal again after, going through that free agency process. Like, I just did this. Let me stick around for a little bit. But then another year goes by. Cardinals aren't competitive. You're going into the final year of a contract. You'd like to maybe be in a competitive situation. You probably do what Arenado did last year and say, yeah, here are some teams that maybe I would consider, and maybe something gets done there. I think the Giants would actually be a great fit for him. Arid climate, not pitching in the heat. I mean, he did well when he was in Oakland. I think he would probably do really well in San Francisco. But if they do decide to move him, it doesn't make their 2026 rotation any better. Like, I know he's kind of been a little bit below expectation, but he hasn't been bad. He's just been kind of mediocre, average compared to what you thought you'd get from him. But Liberatore, you're mentioning the idea of shutting him down, and it's like they need him to throw 150, 160 innings next year. And will he be able to hold up and do that? We'll see. You mentioned Palante has not pitched well. I kind of wonder, are they going to even want to devote $3 million to him through arbitration if, that's what the salary ends up being? I don't know, but if not, you better be ready to go spend $3 million on somebody else and try to replicate that production or improve upon it. The rotation's a question mark, because I don't see Quinn Matthews being ready day one. Like, he might be, but you can't count on that when you're building your team in November. Liam Doyle might show up on your doorstep at some time in 2026. You can't count on that. You just drafted the guy. So I think what has to happen is Chaim Bloom, and maybe he's got him. Maybe he's already aware of what this is going to look like. But if you're not making trades where it's like Lars Nootbaar and a double-A pitching prospect that is kind of intriguing, like Eshawn Henderson, for that controllable starter that you need, if those trades just aren't available because your hitters just don't carry enough value, we'll find out. Mo could not make those deals. Couldn't or wouldn't. We'll find out which it was. If that's not possible, you have to sign like 2 or 3 of the starting pitching versions of Phil Maton and just be right about a couple of them. And like, that could be the way that it goes down. Maybe that's, instead of like $2 million, maybe you're paying $5 million, $3.5 million, and you're just bringing arms to spring for the price of 1 year of Lance Lynn. You signed 3 guys that you're like, I don't know if one of them works out. We can kind of call it good in the aggregate. That's not going to get tickets sold to Busch Stadium, what I'm telling you, but like, that might be the way to do it. And it's a hell of a lot better than not spending any money on it, because I just think internally, McGreevy, I think, is going to be just fine. But unless you do the Kyle Leahy thing, and he's great, you've only got 4. And that's if you don't trade Sonny. That's if Matthew Liberatore holds up, and if Andre Palante can get himself back to being what he was last year. I've got ifs for just about everybody in the rotation, and that's not a great spot to be in. But that being said, like, it's a new guy coming in, Chaim Bloom, a blank canvas. He can do whatever he wants with it. Hopefully he's active.
I hope he looks to Florida, because the Sandy Alcantara thing is legit, and they're going to try to move him. Edward Cabrera in Miami is another one who is sniffing free agency, and even in Tampa, right? You've got a couple of potential bounce back guys. If we're trading for Brandon Lau, Shane Baz, Shane McClanahan, a couple of guys who have fought injury, maybe just names that could come and find their footing again and be great here again. He is Brenden Schaeffer. I am Chris Pelikan. This is the Card Central Postgame Show, and it is sponsored by DraftKings Missouri. Get ready. The wait is almost over. DraftKings Sportsbook, America's top-rated sportsbook app, is coming soon to the Show Me State, and you can sign up today. New Missouri customers can get $300 in bonus bets when we launch on December 1st. Download now and place a $5 bet when we go live. DraftKings Sportsbook brings everything you need to elevate your game day, including live in-game betting, lightning-fast payouts, and endless ways to get in on the action, all right from your phone. And when we officially go live in Missouri, you will be betting with the Sportsbook app trusted by millions, safe, secure, and has fast money withdrawals. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use the code STL Sports to grab $300 in bonus bets with just a $5 bet when we go live December 1st. That's code STL Sports in partnership with DraftKings Sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER, 21 plus, physically present in Missouri. Eligibility restrictions apply. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. Excludes customers who redeem pre-launch sign-up offers. Terms at sportsbook.draftkings.com/promos. So, Brendan, Cards lose tonight 4-2. They get swept in Seattle for the first time in franchise history. They
nice.
are. Yeah, I know. 15 games left in the season. The Cards sitting 4 games out of the wild card. So you're saying there's a chance. Final thoughts from a fun discussion, fun game. Again, I haven't mentioned this, but it was one of my favorite parts of the night. You and I trading texts earlier, and you texted me to say this game has no business being this good. I loved it.
Yeah.
And it really. Hey, you know what? A fun game. Crappy way to finish it, but you know what? The whole series, if you look at it, Cardinals played not too terribly. They just weren't good enough to beat a very, very good Seattle team.
Yeah, the Mariners might make some noise in October. That could end up happening for sure. I really enjoyed watching Riley O'Brien do it for 2 innings. He did give up 1 run, but again, I feel like fans you got to contextualize some of this sometimes. They give you a free base runner on second base. It is very difficult to get through a 10th, 11th, 12th, and 13th inning without giving up a run, unless, of course, the Cardinals are the opponent and they're kind of just going through the motions at the plate, which, it looked like it was happening a little bit at times there, and there was no way to manufacture. Like, you get a free base runner on second. That's why it's so frustrating to lose this game. But the flip side of that is it's okay to be very impressed with the moxie displayed by Riley O'Brien, and I do think that's one guy that as long as he physically can stay healthy, the Cardinals have hopefully at least discovered he's going to be one of those guys in your bullpen next year. He's looked really, really good.
Well, Brendan, thanks for sticking around till 1:13 a.m. here in St. Louis.
What's sleep anyway?
What's sleep anyway? Yeah, I gotta get some of that because I gotta actually be places in the morning. So
yeah.
Well, hey, thank you to you. Thank you to everybody who joined us tonight in the YouTube comment section. Cards are off tomorrow, I believe, and then we are where do we start? Milwaukee on Friday. So yep. For Brenden Schaeffer, I am Chris Pelikan. This has been the Card Central Postgame Show right here on STL Sports Central. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you back here on Friday.